Thank you.
Last week,
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. My friend
Thank
was
you.
a keynote speaker, and so I thought I would try to go
Oh,
and talk
thank
to
you.
the Women's Commission
Thank
because
you.
there's a Washington State Women's Commission to talk to them about chapter development. So it was interesting. There were 250 women there, and I would say 75% of them were women of color. It was super, super cool. Yeah. Anyway, it was good news. We had a tea with the Supreme Court, Washington Supreme Court justices. Yeah. And we had conversations about how it's not great for women right now. Yeah. Was Mary still there? Yeah. Oh, good. Okay. Are we waiting for anybody else? Should we go ahead and start? Can you hear me? Oh boy, that's loud. Is it okay? You all right? Well, hi everybody. Thanks for coming out on a Friday night. And welcome back to Vashon Center for the Arts. I'm Tina Shattuck. I am the executive director and founder of Women Hold the Key. And I'm glad to see you here tonight. Vashon Center for the Arts is pretty near and dear to my heart, and I'm really happy to work with them to bring this lovely lady here. She's super interesting, and she's going to have a really amazing talk, and I'm really excited to have her here. Thank you for coming all the way over here on the Tacoma Ferry, you know, on a Friday night. I don't think she, well, you did. You came early because you knew what it could look like. Vashon Center for the Arts is really pleased to provide free programming, and we intersect with them because everything that we do is also free at Women Hold the Key. But we do rely on your donations to keep free programming coming. So if you would like, there's a really great little box there on your way out. There's also a QR code, so please donate if you can. I was looking at you, Bernie. Okay, so I'm just going to do a really sweet little bio that NaKeesa gave to me. So here we go. NaKeesa Frazier-Jennings is a Black woman who is also a writer, literary performer, entrepreneur, times about 10, I think, and consultant based in the Pacific Northwest. Her work includes published essays in community media, contributions to books and interdisciplinary art projects, and live literary performances with projects such as the nonfiction For No Reason Reader Series and the African American Writers Alliance Writers Read Series. Did I get that right? That's a mouthful. She is the creator of the Gentle Accountability Guided Journal Series for kids, teens, and adults, and it is really amazing, which supports individuals with centering, compassionate, sustainable self-care. Through NaKeesa Marie Enterprises, she works with individuals, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations supporting growth through storytelling, strategy, self-reflection, and community-centered approaches. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Tina. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Can you hear me okay back there? Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I am NaKeesa Frazier-Jennings, as Tina just said, and I think that it is such a wonderful thing for me to be here during Black History Month. So I am going to read two pieces to you that kind of talk about my life experience, my journey as a Black person in this country and as a Black woman. And then after that, we will open it up for audience Q&A and conversation for about 30 minutes. And then I have some books in the back that I have for sale, and we will wrap up the evening. So I am going to get started with reading my two pieces. The first one is called The Never-Ending Resilience Required to Be Black in America. It was originally published by the South Seattle Emerald in June of 2020. Early on the morning of Monday, May 25th, my husband and I got out of bed while the sky was still dark and drove to the beach. We are both fans of a good day trip, but due to the recent recommendations for the people in our state to stay in and stay safe from the coronavirus, we had not taken one in quite a while. My favorite form of exercise is walking, and I prefer to do it outside while enjoying fresh air and the many beautiful sights to see and experience throughout the area I call home, the Pacific Northwest. I have countless pictures of the beautiful scenery and look at them repeatedly because they bring me so much joy. However, with so many parks and trails being closed as of late, exercising for the most part has had to be done inside of my house. So sensing that I needed an outing of some kind, my husband asked, "Do you want to get up at 2 a.m. one day during the Memorial Day weekend and drive to the beach to watch the sunrise?" He was not even finished with his sentence before I yelled out a resounding yes. My husband and I are two of the extremely fortunate people who still have our jobs during the unprecedented rate of unemployment in this country, and for this we are grateful. A few weeks before our drive to the beach, I suggested that we take vacation time from our jobs to just have some time to relax and recharge because the stress of this very unsettling time in our country and then the rest of the world was definitely taking its toll on us. The Memorial Day weekend seemed like the perfect opportunity to get some extended time away from our regular routine, so we both requested the day after Memorial Day as vacation time away from work. My plan was for us to nap a lot, watch movies, and eat some of our favorite meals since we still had to stay home. However, my husband's idea of watching the sun come up while at the beach sounded like a perfect plan. So after just a couple of hours in the car, we arrived at the Pacific Ocean. As the sun rose and the waves showed their always amazing power and beauty, tears of happiness instantly sprung to my eyes. What was even better was that there were no other people on the beach that we could see other than one person who was far off in the distance who looked to be walking their dog. For several moments, I stood near our car and just breathed in and out deeply, savoring this very precious time. After months of worrying and being on heightened alert trying to navigate what and how a global pandemic could affect my husband, myself, and our loved ones, those moments on the beach were like ones I had many times before, but I can't ever remember feeling like I needed them as much as I did on that day, at that time. What I imagine that we, all humans, have been experiencing since the novel coronavirus began to spread across the world was the stress of not knowing what to expect next as things continue to progress at a rapid rate. In my community, the Black community, there were many reports about how a disproportionate amount of deaths from coronavirus were taking its toll on us. This did not surprise me, as I'm used to all manner of health disparities affecting the Black community disproportionately. However, this time scared me much more than ever before. My heart and my mind were both filled with love for and thoughts of all the Black elders, all the Black people who have underlying health conditions, and all of the Black people who did not have access to adequate health care, or even worse, those who would undoubtedly receive less than adequate health care due to the color of their skin, which could lead to disastrous results. To say that my levels of fear and anxiety were at an all-time high would be an understatement. Besides all the Black people outside of my household that I worried about, I was concerned about how, or worse yet, when this pandemic would affect myself, my husband, or both of us. Having had these thoughts for months was all the more reason why our short beach excursion was such a welcome break for me. My husband and I spent a very short time in our car at the beach that day and just moments standing outside near the water before we took the drive back home. We both felt refreshed, but we still crashed on the couch shortly after we got home while it was still morning. The rest of the day was pretty uneventful. But little did we know that in the days and weeks to come, our lives as Black people in America would be impacted in ways that I could personally never have imagined. Quickly, the news media shifted their focus from all-day reporting about the coronavirus to reports about the death of another unarmed Black man, George Floyd, who had died in police custody. And it was as if our viewing of the sunrise at the beach was nothing more than just a dream, because we were instantly back to our reality, which is like living a nightmare. For my part, I was still silently grieving the recent deaths of other unarmed Black people whose stories had been shared between the news segments that were primarily dedicated to the coronavirus pandemic. Honestly, I had been carrying in my heart and in my mind the deaths of all the unarmed Black women, men, and children I'd heard about on national news platforms for the better part of a decade. So though the recent deaths were not new news, they were each just as tragic, heart-wrenching, and fear-inducing as the ones that came before them. In fact, my life, to a large extent, has had the killings of unarmed Black people as a constant part of it for several decades. Miraculously, I have not lost someone close to me in this way, but that does not mean that this normal part of Black life in America has not impacted me greatly. One of my earliest memories of becoming aware and then instantly shaken to my core about how easily an unarmed Black person's life could be taken without there being any consequences for their murder was when I was still in school. I think I was in the 8th grade and my teacher showed us a film about Emmett Till. The sight of his severely mangled and bloated face and body while he laid in his open casket spoke undeniably to the horrific death he had suffered. Back then, in the 1950s, there were no surveillance videos, camera phones, or any other technology to show in vivid detail what took place and led to the death of that 14-year-old Black boy. His mother's insistence that his casket be opened during his funeral and the pictures that were shared by the news media, though, were enough. Fast forward to the year 2016, which is when my husband and I bought our first home. We were proud, happy, felt accomplished, and felt all the other things people feel when they buy their first home. The afternoon that we went to pick up the keys to our new home from the realtor was the day after the news of the deaths that week of both Alton Sterling and Philando Castile, 2 more Black men who had been killed. When my husband picked me up from work so that we could head over to the realtor's office, our conversation could only be about these 2 men. By the time we pulled into the parking lot of the realtor's office, we were both sobbing. We felt these deaths so deeply. I felt not just sadness for those latest 2 victims and their families, but I also felt such a strong sense of grief for every single Black person who was not safe and who was not protected from this either becoming their fate or the fate of someone they love. Every year, on the anniversary of the purchase of our first home, we can only think of the Black men who were killed because celebrating just doesn't feel right. Since George Floyd's death on the same day as our beach outing, I've been inundated with not only my feelings of sorrow that he died in the way that he did, but my heart is just consumed with sadness for his family. I am re-traumatized every time I am online and see the still shots of his body laying on the ground, or when I don't get to the television remote quickly enough so that I hear yet again the pleas he makes for his life, and then him calling out in absolute anguish for his dead mother. The news coverage and the reality of living through everything that has ensued since his death is so heavy and is quite so burdensome to absorb on a daily basis. The depths of the collective pain, fear, and exhaustion that so many Black people are experiencing cannot truly be described in mere words. Seemingly, though, many individuals, institutions, groups, authority figures, and more have come to the agreement and have even gone as far as to say that Black people in the wake of George Floyd's death should take time to take care of ourselves. It seems very logical to some that we should do that, and now more than ever, we deserve to do just that, take the time to take care of ourselves. But how exactly are we to do that when we live in a society where caring for oneself emotionally does not seem to be socially acceptable beyond short-term or momentary pleasures like binge watching television programs or movies for a day, or enjoying a few hours at a spa, or indulging in your favorite meal? During my adult life, I've seen people respond with great kindness to other people and their families who are experiencing a physical illness of some sort. People will rally around them in support by doing things like bringing them food, medication, and flowers, and in some instances, money has even been donated through crowdfunding programs, collections from church members, fundraisers, and more. When someone says that they themselves or their family member is sick with a physical illness and needs time to care for themselves or their family member, for the most part, no one questions it. However, for years, I have shared time and time again how Black people in particular carry the weight of not just the effects that racism has on our daily lives, but how often we live with the fear of how it will play out next and to what degree will it affect us this time. The stress of this type of reality places an emotional burden on a person that someone who does not experience this could never imagine. The level of never-ending resilience that it takes to live day after day under these conditions while taking care of all the other things we have to take care of to just exist: eating, sleeping, working, child rearing, going to school, running errands, going to doctor's appointments, and more, will be unattainable for many. However, Black people are just supposed to do it every single day of our lives without complaint. As a matter of fact, from a very young age, I received the message loud and clear that we Black people are not to show how hard our reality really is to the outside world. This was our business, not to be shared openly or even admitted among ourselves. That message was reinforced in adulthood as I navigated through one dehumanizing event after another, most of which I only had to experience based on the fact that I am Black. I have rejected and will continue to reject that message. From my perspective, everyone who is not Black needs to hear about our reality, and they need to hear about it from us. Until I take my last breath, I will continue to be one of the Black voices who will unapologetically speak to exactly what our reality is by sharing my own life experiences. The emotional toll that living in a Black body takes on a Black body is largely considered something that many believe is just not real. Unlike when someone says that they are physically ill and need support, when a person needs time to care for their emotional well-being, it's not even considered necessary or valid. So when I and many others have said that Black people need time to take care of ourselves, we are largely ignored. When I would tell people that my personal boundaries and commitment to self-care were non-negotiable in order to support my overall wellness, they'd often seem perplexed. Sometimes, very rarely, people would understand and even agree that these strategies were good for one's wellness. However, there is not a true level of real support in our society for that to happen, at least not in the way that Black people need. From living with the insidiousness of racism that permeates every facet of our lives, from activities of daily living to health disparities, and to the very real threat of being killed violently while unarmed, because our lives aren't valued and we are seen by far too many as less than, and therefore unworthy of human decency. What do? How do we support ourselves emotionally? What would that even look like if it could be done adequately enough so that Black people get the time to, at the very least, get restorative rest to recharge and try and exist another day? I can tell you right now, it is not spending less than 30 minutes at the beach wearing masks in the midst of a viral pandemic. So finally, I ask, can Black people living in a society, reality, and climate like this ever really get a break? Of course, the answer is absolutely, unequivocally, no. Thank you. So I want to give all of us, including myself, a couple seconds to just relax and take in and process what we've heard before I go into the next piece. Okay. I think I'm ready. Are you guys ready? All right. So this next piece is titled Soft. This one I wrote in October of 2023 as part of what Tina was reading in my bio, the Nonfiction for No Reason writers group, or program, I'm sorry. So I was approached to be a part of this program, and I was asked to write something new and bold and something that I had not shared before. So I thought, perfect, I'll write about the Black Girls Boot Camp, because I had not shared about that before. So I will read to you my piece, Soft, now. NaKeesa, smile, because I don't want you walking around here looking evil like all these black women you see around you. The first time my dad said this to me, I was 8 years old. He didn't say that because he hated black women, but because he loved his daughter, and he wanted his little girl to be able to just be a kid. But I'm sure that he knew the first time he said that to me, and every time thereafter, that it wouldn't be possible for me to ever just be a kid. He knew that, and so did I. So his request for me to smile was very confusing. See, from the time that I was born, from the moment I took my first breath, I was entered into a boot camp, and I was enrolled without having any say in the matter. This was a special kind of boot camp, not one where my parents had to go to a specific place to sign me up for anything or speak to a recruiter on my behalf. No, see, I just needed to be born black and assigned female at birth. The Black Girls Boot Camp, as I call it, had only one goal, and that was for me to learn how to be tough. Like in most other types of boot camps, there was no room for softness. However, unlike other boot camps, since I had no say in the matter, I just had to submit to the teachings, requirements, doctrine, and drills that were part of the programming, no matter what. There were no breaks, there was no way to unenroll, and you couldn't even be discharged. It was a lifetime commitment, and little black girls like me had no choice. And no matter where I looked around me in my hometown area when I was growing up, unfortunately, my dad was right. Almost all of the black women who were in my life during my formative years rarely did ever smile. You see, they had gone through that same boot camp and carried with them all the burdens and stresses that came with it, and they passed down what they learned to me. It was drilled into me that I needed to be tough because this world would not allow me to have an easy or carefree life, even as a child. It was also instilled in me that every minute of every day, mentally, intellectually, psychologically, and physically, I had to be prepared to protect myself. In fact, when I was just 7 years old, I was told that I had to be ready to fight, physically fight anyone who threatened to physically harm me. Repeatedly, no, incessantly, I was told that it wasn't a matter of if something terrible was going to happen to me, it was just a matter of when. So by the time I entered puberty, warnings about stranger danger intensified to warnings about how I was going to start receiving an increased level of attention from boys and even from grown men, with the threat of being raped or assaulted linked to those warnings. The proof that I needed to always be on high alert to protect myself from being physically assaulted was etched into my brain with two very distinct yet related experiences. One when I was 15 and the other when I was 17. Both times, grown men spotted me, got in my personal space, gave me compliments, and asked me for my phone number. Both times, I politely refused, and each time, my refusal was not accepted. I was then, in both instances, followed from the train that I took to each of my summer jobs. When I realized that I was being followed, I decided to run. I was chased, and both times narrowly escaped the clutches of the men who felt that I owed them access to me, though I had refused their advances. So when my dad wanted me to look pleasant, to be more inviting to the general public, that was in direct contrast to all of my training. And I knew far before I was 15 and got chased to work the first time that going around smiling was not going to keep me safe. I couldn't give off some unspoken message that I was super accessible. My life experience coupled with the Black Girls Boot Camp taught me that every single part of my life required that I always be on high alert. This reality did not lend itself to me as a Black girl and then later as a Black woman to being someone who could afford to smile a lot. And I sure couldn't be seen as being soft. In fact, part of the boot camp doctrine had me equating the word soft as synonymous with the word weak. And even though the strong Black woman identity is extremely harmful for people who look like me, I had no choice to be just that, be strong, and in no way seen as soft. I was further taught that I didn't have the luxury to just be human. It was expected that I be some superhuman version of myself, someone who always needed to be hyper-vigilant, hyper-aware, hyper-protective, and always ready to act. When dealing with micro and macro aggressions in multiple spaces, patriarchy, misogyny, various injustices, coupled with the racism that is interwoven into every aspect of life for me, made just existing require me to possess a level of strength that should be considered utterly unreasonable and unsustainable. But not for me, nor for every other person who looks like me. Dealing with one trauma to the next, whether direct or indirect, acute or chronic, there is never a break from this reality. So, to cope with this intense existence, I created a very intentional self-care practice. And for years, it served me very well. But eventually, it became clear that self-care alone just wasn't enough. I knew I needed it to combat all the horrific things I had to witness and experience. However, one day, out of the blue, I had the realization that what was missing is that I needed to embrace softness. To say that this revelation was a surprise to me would be an understatement. It was confusing, scary, and new. But I had to accept that no amount of self-care alone was going to be enough. The problem was, there was no guidance or manual or program that existed for how to accomplish this. So I had to figure it out on my own. But because of the programming I'd received in the Black Girls Boot Camp, coupled with the reality of my life as a Black woman, I didn't know how to put my hypervigilance around self-protection or toughness aside, ever. Not even for a moment. Even in times when I didn't have to be tough or strong, feeding the toughness that the Black Girls Boot Camp had ingrained in me provided me with a measure of safety, security, and protection, so I was extremely apprehensive to begin to explore the possibility of me embracing softness. Many will undoubtedly see it as a sign of weakness, and I was sure would immediately try to take advantage of me. So not only was it scary, but it was also super risky for me to show any type of softness. But again, at the same time, something had to give. I needed to discover how to access the softness that was inside of me and balance it with still being able to protect myself. Softness and toughness somehow had to coexist. So for starters, I began practicing accessing my softness through meditation, yoga, being still, and daydreaming. This journey, which I'm still learning to navigate, is one that I've had to engage in completely with the same amount of focus and intensity that was required while enrolled in the Black Girls Boot Camp of my youth. Though this is still frightening and very much new, I've also found it to be truly magical and pure and healthy. And I've come to know that embracing my softness does not mean that I cannot also protect myself, as I will always have to do that as a Black woman in this world. But from now on, I will protect myself while being tough, strong, and soft all at the same time. Thank you. Thank you. I just need one second. Obviously, that's very heavy, so I just needed some fresh air. So I just want to open it up to, I think, a two-way conversation and questions that you might have for me, and I have some questions for you all. As I mentioned, self-care is a huge part of my life. Obviously, I needed to embrace that and engage in that in my life. So it's a non-negotiable thing for me. And though I believe that everyone should engage in self-care, which is why I wrote 7 books and I have them for kids, teens, and adults, I really do prioritize supporting Black women in their self-care journeys. It's obviously my identity, it's very important to me, and it's very important for them. So I have prioritized this as being like my #1 goal in my mission to really encourage the whole world to engage in self-care. It might sound corny or cheesy or whatever, but I do believe that if we all engaged in self-care more, we have a different kind of society right now. So I do want to open it up for any questions that you have for me to start, and then I might ask some questions of you all.
I have more of a comment. When you did your first piece, I had never before considered the community of Black people, how they felt about all the killing. So I just thought, oh gosh, this really hurts me, or this is really sad for people on the street. I never really considered the Black community, which is so weird that it never even occurred to me. So I really am honored that you shared that with me, and I can see it from a different point of view. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I think what's really tough about our society sometimes is that we do only see things from like our own perspective and our own reality, and don't always think about how even the people who are most impacted by something might be feeling. So I appreciate you, sharing that openly, admitting that, but also continuing to try to find out more, things, and being here obviously is one of the steps and ways that you can do that. And that's why I did say in that first piece that, I really do believe that I don't want to use my trauma and my life as entertainment per se, but I do want to share my experiences openly, because I think that it is very important that the world hear that from the people that are actually experiencing these things. Did you have your hand up, Tina?
I just was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what you do in your own self-care routine. I know you said you meditate, but like, where does it look like now? Because I'm sure it's an arc for you, right? Of having to really embrace the softness.
Yeah.
Like, what does it look like, and how do you manage when it's hard?
Yeah, so I want to always say that even though I am a advocate of self-care, I hesitate to answer that question sometimes, because I never want people to feel like I'm an expert or that what I do is going to work for someone else. or that I'm saying that people have to engage in self-care in the way that I do. But I also want to say that the reason that why reading that was so difficult, not the soft piece, I love the soft piece, is because the one from 2020 was like it was such a difficult time. It was such a dark time for us, and I was like really frightened. So having to go back to thinking about that is tough. But I wanted to read both pieces because though I have been engaging in self-care in some way or form since I was like 15, even though that term was like not a term back then. It has changed and it has grown and evolved, which the soft piece really, gets to. So now, that was written in 2023. Now I'm embracing ease. If it's like hard, I don't want to do it. And that doesn't mean that I'm a Virgo, by the way, a recovering Virgo, a proud but yet recovering Virgo. So I want to do all the things, and I am a person that is very self-motivated and high functioning and all those things, but I, realized over time that doing everything myself was not, caring for myself in the best way. Again, the evolution of my self-care practice has led me to a place of not just embracing my softness, but like I said, ease. I mean, I got here 4 hours early today because I want to ease. That's easier for me than being stressed out, missing a ferry, running late, all those things. So even when we were like packing up our car with the books that I have for sale, my husband's like, oh, I hope it doesn't hurt my back when I'm like lifting these, bins. And I was like, you're not doing that. We're bringing a cart. Like even though like it's flat there and we've been there before and there's no steps, like I really want to stop and think about how to engage in ease as much as possible, because my life still is very challenging with the external forces, and sometimes they, reach you in your own home, even if you're not like out and being like physically harmed by somebody. Structural racism, systemic racism, all those things still impact us, even if I don't leave my home. Like I mentioned, seeing that same scene of George Floyd being killed, that was traumatic for me. And I saw it over and over again, and it was, constantly being talked about and, all of that. So not to diminish what he went through, but those of us who were still, here, were continuously impacted by it. So I do other things like I try not to consume content that's upsetting. I mentioned in that first piece about learning about Emmett Till when I was, I think, in the 8th grade. And I have seen any number of documentaries, fictitious pieces about the injustices that Black people have experienced, particularly around when my ancestors were enslaved in this country. And I just don't want to consume that anymore. It's like, I got it. I know it happened. I know a lot about it. And I don't need to continue to harm myself by consuming it. So for me, and this is what I do try to ask other people to do, is to think about, I really want people to have the mindset of them deserving self-care and figuring out from that place what that means for you. So I really do kind of organize my life around self-care. Like that's how I start every day. That's how I treat myself. Like everything else has to be scheduled and done around that. That has to be first. So there's not just like one thing. It's just kind of my way of existing at this point, and for a while, granted. I was sharing when I was on a podcast a couple weeks ago how I do things like if I throw myself a birthday party, I'll turn my phone off on the day of the party, and I have in the invitation, call my husband if you have any issues. Because as a recovering Virgo, I wanted to do all the things. I wanted to make sure everything was perfect. I wanted my party to be what I wanted it to be, but I was like draining myself before I even got there, right? So that's really like contradictory to what your birthday party should be. You should be enjoying yourself. You should be, chilling out. You should be, having quality time with your friends and your guests, and me running around worrying about whether someone got lost or if someone needs an umbrella to get into the venue or something. My husband's able to handle all of that, and then I can actually celebrate and be celebrated and enjoy my party. So that is just like my mindset. How am I taking care of myself in every single scenario I'm in every single way in my life? Does that answer your question? Okay. I would like to take her, yeah.
What I take from both of the pieces is that your decision to do self-care is a radical act of resistance.
Mm-hmm.
When I compare, I'm so grateful for your voice to share what it's like on the inside. So I obviously was white and looking from the outside. And there's no way that I can experience your trauma in the way you experience it. To have that share from the inside in such a clear, compassionate way. It's an invitation. Please step into my world. Please see the world as I see it, as we all see it. Please see how hard it is. Please join me. And if I have to stop resistance with that hard world, I will find this wonderful peace.
Yep.
And I will spread it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's incredible. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that one thing that is definitely not popular for people who look like me is to advocate for any number of things, in our lives, but certainly caring for ourselves is not something that's supported. And like I said, I am going to talk about, my experience till I take my last breath. I'm going to engage in self-care until I take my last breath. Nothing and no one is going to make me feel like I shouldn't be doing this. And I will never stop. I know with every fiber of my being that I deserve it. And there's nothing, regardless of how others might see me or value me or whatever, doesn't matter because I know that. And I'm going to do everything in my power to continue to resist in this way and give myself what I deserve. So I saw another hand.
What advice would you give to your 8-year-old girl that was told to smile now when you came back?
To do exactly what she did and not smile. I didn't listen to my dad. He just would say that. And he said that because I didn't go around smiling a lot. But yeah, I would tell her to be her authentic self, which I feel that in some miraculous way, I was born being exactly who I am and was never influenced to be anything other than that or to see myself as less than or undeserving. I know that self-confidence is sometimes rare, and I don't know why. I have some ideas as to why I am the way that I am. I definitely think it was nurtured to some extent inside my household, but I kind of always been this way to a large extent, and so I would just tell her to be authentically who she is, and not listen to any of the nonsense externally.
Oh, yes.
I have a few thoughts. You touched me on many different levels and thoughts. I've always wondered about how Black families handle that deep pain of raising their children at the same time as helping them understand the danger and how to be safe without wounding. You know, I mean, it's so wounding. And how, so I think what you're struggling with is sort of like how do you hold on to your beautiful, authentic self and that total real belief that you can blossom in this world safely, while at the same time knowing that there is those real dangers, and those real dangers keep wounding over and over. That's a tremendous strength to have that resilience. And so that raised for me sort of the question of what is being soft. And then I just wanted to make one other observation, because I too was a woman who came of age in the 1950s and 1960s. And while I didn't have the same dimension of complexity and wounding that you had in your life, much the same of smiling, not smiling, and seeing that sense of proprietorship, or, you know, I have run from men. I've been in difficult situations where the typical chase you around the desk situation, you know, when you're a young woman. So that too, for me, that too, that knowledge that we have to be self-protective and at the same time trying to be who we are. And I struggled with that a lot as an adolescent. So I just wanted to, I don't know why, I just wanted to raise that also. But I think, and here we are in this world that we're in right now, and we're trying to know how to be resilient, how to keep the deep love alive, how to keep hope alive, how to keep strength alive, how to support each other. And I just feel like you've brought all of those things together in what you presented, and
Thank
appreciate
you.
your voice very much.
Thank you. You said a lot, so I'll do my best to. So I want to clarify that when I spoke about the 1950s in that first piece, I was talking about something that I had learned about in school. I was not alive during that time, but seeing that I guess it was pictures in a film of Emmett Till's body definitely stuck with me, even though it had happened, you know, before my time. And I also wanted to address something you said about, I think you said, struggling with how we balance and raise, you know, our children, or speak to our children about. So I would say that I'm not struggling. I am great. You know, I'm great in a sick, crazy world that is bent on my destruction. But I am great because I really do pour into myself. I have created a great community of chosen family and close friends. I am in a bubble of my own creation, so I have a very curated existence, and that is the way that I have been able to exist and thrive, really, in the surroundings of, you know, the world that I find myself in. It's not that I'm never touched by these things, obviously, but I think what was so difficult about revisiting and rereading that piece from 2020 is because it was just like such a dark time, and I'm no longer like identify with some of the things that I was the things that I talked about that are facts and the reality of my life as a Black person, that's not going to change. But I really did work very diligently to try to evolve from that space because that was not a sustainable space for me to be in, for my own health and well-being and wellness. So it was just like really dark and it was really scary. So I was in a certain place when I wrote that, and I'm glad that I wrote that, and I'm happy to share it, but it is difficult because then evolved to, on my journey to the place of thinking about and being very intentional about accessing softness. And for me, to answer your question about that, being soft for me is letting go of some of the things that I can't control, not being as intense, not being as hard on myself as I, can be, wanting to like do things perfectly, and understanding that though I am a strong person, a resilient person, I don't always have to do that. I can like be human because these things are like horrific and unimaginable. So I also, like I was talking about, not consuming certain types of like content for entertainment, like really curating that part of my life. And like I won't even like talk to people sometimes about certain things because I don't want to continue to bombard my system, my nervous system, my mind, my thoughts about those things. So that to me is how I access softness for my particular situation. Yes.
So I know that community is super important to you. A lot of this discussion is about like how you are dealing with it individually and like what changes you're making individually. How do you feel like since you've started putting all of this out there, putting all of the softness and the like self-care stuff out there, do you feel like you've gotten community around that like other people that recognize that need, and have you seen any kind of cohesion of that around you?
I would say yes, particularly with the Black women in my life. This is my friend, by the way, our family friend, Mike. So, he's purchased some of my self-care books for, I guess, family members, not yourself, right? Okay. I don't want to say something that's not true, but for family members. And so I've particularly had Black women, though, say to me that, I've known you for years and you always have talked about self-care in one way or another, or had like self-care events. I was like doing these things for years, like even before COVID happened. And because I watched you do this and you just are unapologetic about it, and you're very vocal about it, it made me start thinking about ways that I could engage in self-care, or that I should be doing that. Or I'll think, people have literally said, what would NaKeesa think if I skip my lunch today? Like, they've said that to me more times than I can count. So I would say that I've had community around it in one way or another for a long time, because I created those spaces, as you know, like the Black women's, self-care themed dinners that I would host and stuff like that. But I would say now that I have moved to this iteration of like creating these self-care guides, these workbooks, and creating one specifically for Black women that have pictures of Black women throughout, so that we can see ourselves as we're going through this, personal journey. And then, doing a book tour about it. It's definitely gotten a lot more energy, yeah. But I don't know that I see that it's like a huge uptick, because I feel like I've been having it. I would just say that new people are coming kind of into my life around it, which I'm very happy about, because I really do, I know it sounds cheesy, guys, but I really do want the whole world to engage in self-care. So I would say, yeah, Black women for sure, but people of other identities have shared that with me as well, but they are the ones who have shared it with me the most.
just want to say thank you for being here and for writing the words and for speaking the words and sharing your truth with us and with so much power and softness. And, you know, both pieces are so incredibly moving. And I think, you know, personal is political. And I think that, or I felt how you touched on the collective grief and trauma and pain and fear of Black people, not just in the United States, but particularly in the United States, I think, especially even, I mean, all times, you know, too, but, so thank you for weaving that, you know, sharing your story, but how it connects, and how people are forced to carry it, you know, unjustly as it is. But, and the second piece on softness, you know, and imagining you as your 8-year-old self and thinking, you know, young girls getting robbed of their childhood, you know, and having to put that armor on so early. And the victory that you model of being able to take the armor off, you know, and stand and live with it all. I mean, and knowing that it's still there, you might have to get up at any time, you know, but that you've accessed this place of self-love, you know, which I think is the most radical thing, because we all see how self-hatred plays out, you know, and just creates more violence. And self-love and really practice and cherishing yourself, that you deserve, and are sharing that, you know, Black women, Black people are worthy, you know, and really getting that, drumming that message. That, it's so important, I think. And I'm just so grateful for you turning your life and your story into something that is so beautiful and transformative, obviously to yourself, but to others, and the resonance, you know, that you might not ever know, but it ripples out and changes the world, you know, it really does. And so I just want to honor you and thank you and celebrate you and just applaud you too, you know, so thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. One thing that I want to always share is that though I have curated this existence in this kind of bubble, like I said, for myself, I'm not always able to be in that bubble. And I do have to pick up that armor more often than I would like to. So I always want to acknowledge that I'm not just living this like carefree, you know, life, because I have been heard to say many times, and I believed this, and to an extent I still do, that you can't get well in the same place that you got sick. But I have to live in this world. Even if I move, you know, somewhere else or whatever, that doesn't mean I'm not gonna be impacted by a lot of the same things. But I had to figure out, how do I get well? How do I access softness? How do I protect myself while still existing in this space, which led to the curation of this very carefully crafted existence that I deserve. And I don't just want my words to be heard by people, particularly people who look like me. I want them to see me doing this, because people who have seen me do this, whether I say anything to them about it or not, change how they are engaging in self-care for themselves, and that's like the biggest honor, and I'm just so proud and happy about that. Not that I'm proud and happy because I think that I like made them do it, but because I know that they deserve it and I want them to know that. So if seeing me or hearing me talk about it makes them just stop for a second to think about how they can do that in their lives, that makes me really happy. Thanks. Any other questions, comments? Oh, yes, Kimberly. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, you said so much too. I don't even know where to begin. All of it is just, it's so true. I think this is an unpopular opinion, but I embrace being an angry black woman actually, because we have so much to be angry about, and it's righteous anger. You know, we deserve to be angry. So if I have to get angry, I get angry. I express, how I feel about whatever. I'm very outspoken, as you all can see. So I kind of want to reclaim that, if I can in my lifetime, that phrase, because people put that on us in a way that's negative, to try to flip on us that how we respond to maltreatment is the problem. And the problem is the treatment. So we deserve to be angry. I'm not going to pretend like something is not assaulting me, you know what I mean? Harming me. So people can call me angry all they want. You're right, I am. But yes, everything else you said about the nervous system and all of that. Yeah, so, so important. I mean, my husband will tell you he is an expert driver, and he is, like everybody Mike can tell you he is. But now he'll tell, I know it like annoys him greatly, but he'll be like, oh my gosh, why is this person driving 42 in a 55 mile an hour road? And I say, who cares? We don't have to be there until whatever, because I'm always early to everything. So I'm like, it doesn't matter. we have time. Let's just chill. Let them drive slow because we don't need to get our blood pressure up, because of what. So I'm like really in that space of whenever I can, again, embrace softness, not put extra stress on myself because we have enough, to deal with, he and I as Black people, not just me as a Black woman. So I'm not going to let people driving slow in front of us, like, get me all upset. And I don't want that, him feeling that either. And that, I would say, is another thing that's kind of, I don't know if I tricked him to do this or what, but trying to make sure that the people in my household engage in self-care also helps my self-care. It's a reciprocal thing, and it's an amazing thing, and it's helpful to everyone, and that is why though I prioritize Black women, talk about, kids as early as possible. Let's not only model self-care for them in our own practice, but encourage them to have self-reflection, have time alone, and, know what their boundaries are, and all those things that I think take intentionality to invest in young people and to support them throughout their childhood and into adulthood. I want young people being born or living today to not have to unlearn things that a lot of us who are adults had to. So I think we have a responsibility and an opportunity to do that, which is why I always talk about kind of household self-care, or like young people or other people who may not even be in your household, just making sure that you are kind of spreading that message and modeling that yourself as much as possible. Yes.
So your husband and I haven't had this conversation, but I came because I didn't understand the word soft.
Oh.
Don't know if it's a gender thing or if it's something you do entirely internally, which I didn't hear enough about that. I could use a couple more hours. Soft.
I gotta catch the ferry, I'm sorry.
I'm old, but I got it at 10:30, so. And you spoke a lot about it as a personal dynamic of some kind, which, sorry, went over my head. But that's why I showed up, because the word soft is very difficult. It's difficult to observe. It's difficult to be. I understand strength. I don't understand soft. So I appreciate some of what you said and what you called self-care. And some of that, I read the books back there, and maybe I'm too old, but I couldn't quite figure out how I would do that. So I'm not sure I have a question here, except talk more about soft as your dynamic in living in this world. And I spent 20 years in the city, working for the city. I understand the city. We're out here in the country. So when we go 35 miles an hour, it's just right for us. That's just what we do. Anyway, I'm sorry I don't have a specific question, except it's a mystery word. How do you be soft when all that you have to do as a personal woman, as a mother, who's responsible as a mother? Can you just give me 5 more minutes? If you understand the question.
I don't know that I 100% do, but I think that I will just reiterate what I shared earlier, which is just the way that I am treating myself, how I am embracing and taking like the easier path in a lot of the different things that I have to do. Sometimes we make things hard on ourselves unintentionally. So I stop and think about, how can I do this in a way that's more gentle to myself? How can I make sure I'm not, like I mentioned a couple times, not ingesting entertainment that's like upsetting? Because I think I read like a study or something, or heard it somewhere, that when you get scared, whether it's real fear, like danger is happening to you, or you're like watching it on a movie, your body experiences it the same way. So I'm trying not to make myself be in those situations as often as possible. And even things like starting my day slower, I like to get to it. My personality is to jump up. My husband don't like this either, but jump up and get started with the day. I want to like work out at 4 something in the morning. I want to go outside and get fresh air no matter how cold it is. But I will check in with how I'm feeling and not have to just like do that just because that's what I think I should do or I like or whatever. How am I feeling today? Do I need a slower start to my day? Why don't I just drink some warm lemon water right now and wrap up in my cozy blanket on the couch and like start my day slower today, because I just need that today. So it's just like a mindset for me. It's not like any particular thing or recipe I can give to anyone. I think that, again, people have to figure out what that is for themselves, but that is how I approach it.
Okay, that makes sense, thank you.
Linan, did you have your hand up?
Well, it kind of goes, what I was putting together with regards to your second part about saying that you still embrace the angry black woman, that the softness you're talking about and the self-care is internalized system to not beat yourself up with turmoil or keep your nervous system easy, but it doesn't mean you're passive. So what happens is I think when we hear the word soft, it goes down to this, which I think you said when you were younger, this soft, that is soft means weak, and soft means all these things. And actually, I thought, and I don't know if you said it or it just came in my head, that your softness is your armor. That, you know, that it's, you wouldn't, who would say soft is armor? It's hard, right? But the way that you're using the word softness is to give yourself that compassion, give yourself that groundedness, give yourself that strength to internally to have the kindness, but the armor, the strong armor to face whatever when you get out of your bubble. And while you were talking, I was sort of like, right now, we're all, I assume, feeling a lot of rage. And it all is affecting us in different ways and how we impact. But, you know, I don't have the same experience as you as a black woman, but I have the experiences as a woman. And what, you know, my safety on the street too, and these things, again, it's a different experiences and different stereotypes, but, you know, we still want to be permeable to love and be to the world and not have a hard armor. And to do that, I think, is what I'm hearing you reminding me too, is the favorite thing you said for me was that you actually organize your day around self-care. It's like, I'm taking that one home.
Good.
Like, oh my God, because so many times we have this, I'm a listy person, right? 7 million things today, and then, oh my God, it's 9 o'clock and I did nothing for my self-care. And so when you said you get up and you prioritize it, I thought, that's a whole other way to start. And the number one thing on my list is, when in this day am I going to do something self-care? And it can be as simple as don't beat yourself up this morning about something you didn't get done yesterday. So I just really appreciate it. But that's how I've internalized what you've said, the inner versus the outer. But I love when you said, honestly, after all this business about self-care, you go, oh yeah, I'm still an angry black woman. Because I was thinking, oh yeah, I'm still an angry woman. So I was glad to be able to hear that.
Thank you.
That combination of both that, the strength and the softness.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad that you took those things from what I said and that you're going to now kind of rearrange how you approach your self-care because, you know, a lot of people will tell me, especially women, women who have caretaking responsibilities of all types, not just kids, but sometimes your parents or your spouse or whatever. Like, I can't do that. I can't do self-care. And I'm like, you will have to figure out what that is for yourself. But just like you decide so many other things that you have to do in life, make that like a thing that you have to do. Put it on the same level as making your dentist appointment or whatever. Because in my opinion, it is that important. So I think, again, I will continue to say we all have to do that in the way that makes sense for us. But I do believe that everyone can find some way, some little ways, and maybe sometimes some big ways where we can do that for ourselves. But I do think that mindset is the way that we start to figure that out. I think I can take one more question because I've actually been doing the Q&A way longer than I think we had planned for me to. I did want to know if people were engaging in self-care and how you define strength in your lives. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Great. Love it. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for doing that work. That's fantastic. Would anyone else like to share?
I am at WHtK. We have a Sunday salon, and the focus this month is reciprocity, talking about that idea of how women typically give without the acknowledgement that there needs to be reciprocity, and so it's just an interesting kind of dynamic that you put forward that we could talk about when we have a conversation about Sunday. That reciprocity really is not just sort of people giving and expecting back, but the circle of reciprocity and how we could all do better at taking care of each other, essentially. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, self-care is really sort of so big and so wide. And,
Yeah.
the idea of self-care is just really big and really wide, and it depends, I think, on where you are in your life and who you're taking care of and how much time you have. And women in general give a lot all the time without the expectation of getting anything back for it. So we oftentimes give away opportunities to care for ourselves because we're caring for other people. But how do we turn that back around and come full circle or embed stuff that really, I've never gotten up and thought, well, what am I going to do around my self-care today? Because I'm a parent and I have a job, but it's a really great challenge. I have been challenged, to think about what do I need and to put it on the list of what happens in the day and to make it as important as everything else.
Absolutely. Amen. Yeah, that's what I often share about when I decided when I was around 15 that I looked around at the women in my life and said, nope, I do not want my life to look like that, because I saw just that, them not even being on the list of priorities. So I didn't start out at that time saying I'm going to make my self-care my priority, but I did say, if I have a family, if I'm partnered, whatever my like adult life looks like, I am going to definitely have my care, my joy, my fulfillment be on the list. Like what I need is just as important as everyone else's in the family. So it did evolve to, no, mine is first, meaning not necessarily that I'm like taking away from anyone else, but I'm waking up thinking about, what am I going to do? I am going to do something for myself first, as soon as I wake up in the morning, whatever that is. Like I said, lemon water, working out, whatever, but also woven throughout the day and then every single day of life. I'm not going to like make sure everybody else goes and gets their physicals and I don't get one. Like, what sense does that make? I forget for years to do like simple, normal things, but that is the reality of a lot of women's lives. And I just knew that I didn't want that. So, yeah.
A word that came to me last year was spaciousness. And I just felt you had mentioned ease, and it's kind of the same thing. I feel like we don't have enough spaciousness in our life. I was running from one thing to the next and feeling that, got to be out there, got to be doing, got to be blah, 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 blah. And I was not taking that time to create space in my life to just relax, not be driven, reflect. So I do have a practice in the morning of making my coffee and sitting in the living room and reflecting and possibly writing in my journal. And it is really wanting to be more deeply connected with sort of what I would refer to as the more sacred elements of life and why I'm here. So that even my running around is more deeply connected to why I'm here. And then just trying to create more spaciousness within that.
I love that. Spaciousness. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else want to share before we close out this portion? Thank you. Thank you for being here and for listening to what I had to say. So I will be in the back selling my guided journals. I have one for everyone, I believe. And my special edition, the newest version, is for Black women. My dream is that every Black woman, at least in this country, is able to access a copy of that book. But like I said, I have one for kids, teens, and then I have 5 different versions for adults. So if you are interested, I will be in the back, and I will sign them for you if you would like. Thank you.